Hi, everybody. Welcome to Café con Tampa Online. I'm Bill Carlson. I'm going to hand off to my program co-chair, Dell, to introduce the speaker.
Good afternoon, everybody. As I say every week, we miss you at our live meetings at Café con Tampa, and we ask you to stay safe and be healthy. Today, we have an extremely interesting program. Our guest speaker is Todd Thompson. He's a movie producer based out of Orlando with North Star Productions. Right now, he's in production of the Highway movie. It's a movie and a documentary series. It's the fascinating story of the Florida Highwaymen, a unique group of self-taught African-American artists that sow their art on the side of Florida highways. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Florida Highwaymen?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me. My name's Todd. I'm with Stars North, as you said, based out of Orlando, Florida, and the Highwaymen project's been near and dear to my heart for about 15 years now. I was a director. I've been making movies since I was a kid, but I was a director and producer at Disney at the time, and was introduced to the story through a fellow cast member named Val Davis, who's an entertainment attorney with Disney. And we were just at lunch one day, and she pitched me the idea of the story, and just always thought it would make a great movie. Val's a collector herself, so she was telling me the story about Alfred Hare and his tale with the Highwaymen. But it just grabbed me from day one. I mean, I don't know what else to say. It was that simple. It just was something that just resonated with me. I think what really hit me about it most was that you got a character like Alfred Hare, who grew up during a time of Jim Crow South, segregation, civil rights, not being able to really do very limited in what he could do, and he found a way to persevere and follow his passion, his talent for art, and literally not only make a living for himself, but change the lives of 25 other friends that fellow artists that followed suit.
What was the halcyon day period of the Florida Highwaymen?
Oh, I'm sorry, what was the question?
The period of time that the Highwaymen were in their greatest period of production. You mentioned the Jim Crow era, but give us a date time frame if you have.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, Alfred graduated Lincoln Park Academy, I believe 59, and he was already a very talented artist at that point. That's when his art teacher, Zenobia Jefferson, introduced him to Bean Backus. That's when he started training under Bean Backus. And Albert Ernest Backus was a renowned Florida landscape painter back in the day, and lived in Fort Pierce, and just thrived with a lifelong worth of commissions that he was working on, and just seen as an extraordinary artist. And he had a very open door policy back in the day, and anyone could come into his home. He used to say, as long as you didn't talk religion or politics. So he took an immediate liking to Alfred, almost, adopted him as a surrogate son, if you will, and trained him how to paint. And Alfred knew that he would never be seen as an artist because he was Black, and certainly never make the types of commissions Bean got because he was Black. And so that's what motivated him to go back to Blacktown and teach all of his friends how to paint. That's what started things off. So, the period that they thrived, I'd say, it started off in late 50s, early 60s. And really that whole decade leading up to the 1970s was their sweet spot, I think. They produced a lot of paintings, but, they're accredited with producing over 200,000 pieces of art, which is just, it's astronomical when you think about it. It's pretty amazing.
And when how many? They primarily sow on the side of the roads, am I correct?
Yeah, that's how they got their name. Alfred and the group would make up for in quantity what they couldn't do in quality, and so they would do 20-30 paintings a night. The next day, throw them in the back of the car, sometimes still wet, and they would drive up and down US 1 and A1A and sell them out of the backs of their car, the trunks, back seat. They would stop at banks, doctors' offices, dentist offices, tourist places. The pier over in Cocoa Beach Pier. They would just basically go anywhere they could to just talk about their art, promote their art, sell their art, whether it be roadside or walking into local businesses. And they literally sprinkled the coastline with their paintings, for over 15, 20 years. It's pretty remarkable.
And if I can remember correctly, they used materials they could find, right? Like on construction sites and others, paint and and boards and things, or not?
Yeah, this goes back to, his innovation and his perseverance. I mean, he literally, used what he could get his hands on, and he did what he could do during those times. So, since he couldn't really afford canvas and oil paints, they would a lot of times resort to Upson board to paint as their canvas. They would use door frames and window frames for the crown molding, or for the framing rather, crown molding from a house for the framing, and then a lot of times house paints and things like that. But eventually they graduated to more traditional materials. But it was just fascinating to me that they used what they had and they did pretty amazing things with it.
I had the fortune about 15 years ago to go and to become friends of a woman, an elderly woman who had a collection of about 15 to 20 of the Highwaymen period. And the execution and the quality of the work was excellent. And I assume that was pretty consistent with all of them. How many, you said there were 25?
Well, there's 26 artists that are recognized as the original Highwaymen. They were named and founded by Gary Monroe. The chronology of it was Jim Fitch, who was a curator and an art journalist, discovered them and started doing his research and putting together the pieces and parts that to make up the story. And because of the way he discovered that they sold, that's how they got their name, the Highwaymen. So he published an article, I believe it was in 94, 95 in an art journal. And it was, not necessarily a big article, a long article, but it just nailed it right on the head. It called them the Highwaymen, and that's when they got their name. So from that point on, collectors and whatnot, they really started to hone in and do their research about these artists. And guys like Gary Monroe really just, it kind of becomes an obsession with these collectors and these dealers and enthusiasts like Gary. And so he went on as far as to, start publishing books and doing research and working with University Press to really dive deep into who these guys were. And so in doing his research and in kind of partnering and piggybacking on where Jim Fitch left off, if you will, he determined that there were 26 artists, 25 men and one woman, Marianne Carroll. And he defined them by the way that they painted, those that, did paint on the Upson board, and those that, found their way and found the means to accomplish their art during these times. I think that's what his parameters were. And so because of that, we now have our 26 artists. And thanks to Gary and his efforts, they were inducted and recognized by the state of Florida, inducted into the Florida Artists Hall of Fame in 2004, which was a pretty big feat because, if you look back at the history of the inductions, it's usually like a specific artist that gets inducted. And this was, I believe, the first time a large group, 26 in fact, got inducted at one time. So it's pretty remarkable.
Hi, Del, let me say, I just have to tell everybody, I grew up in Sebring, and Jim Fitch was in Sebring, and it was around 94, 95 that he started telling me about this. And he said, if you just follow the paths, I didn't know what it was, and nobody at the time it was, as you said, that's around the time thing was created. And my mom just posted a question that asks, is Jim Fitch still alive? And you said you interviewed him just a couple weeks ago. So
yeah,
I have
to
give him a call.
So I think
I have to give him a call and say hi. He was my grandmother's art teacher is the way I met him. But he said he would go up and down the highways and knock on people's doors trying to follow where these guys went. And he has a museum in Avon Park, what used to be called South Florida Community College. I think it's the Florida Museum of Arts and Culture or something like that. And he has a whole bunch of that. Was where I was first introduced to Christopher Still and a lot of Florida's great artists. But I think you said the Highwaymen would go up and down the road and sell them for like $15 each. Jim would buy them for a similar amount. And now, Charlie Chris put them in the governor's mission, use them in museums, they're Florida House Flores Museum, Embassy in DC. They're in lots of great homes everywhere. They're very flexible.
Yeah. So Bill, going back to Sebring real quick. So, I think he was on assignment for a new Florida folk museum that was going to be opening up in Sebring. That's when he first discovered the Highwaymen, for working for that museum. And that's really what led to the discovery and the naming of this group. So, he did a lot of the footwork, and, so for me, when I discovered this story, as fascinating as the history of the artists themselves is, you couldn't have that without a guy like Fitch, doing his piece of the work too, which is the discovering. And so the script that we crafted ended up taking on that past and present day motif, if you will. It follows that storyline where, somebody from the present day, in this case the 1990s, discovers their work and ends up unveiling, almost peeling back the layers of the onion to figure out, who these people were and how they painted and why they painted and whatnot. So, for as much as you love or hate the art, the story behind it, you can't help but admire and place value on, really.
Tell
One
us
of our
about,
regulars, Bob Terry, just posted. He said he had the great privilege to work with Robert Butler while producing prints for his work, and he said the stories he told working were wonderful. He generously signed a piece of art for him. Robert Butler just died, what, 2 or 3 years ago?
Yeah, I mean,
He
I
was-
don't know the exact
he was
date,
young.
but we've been, sadly, a lot of the artists have been passing. In fact, we just were in Fort Pierce, it's about a month ago now, but a week before we got there, Rodney Demps passed away, and we had just been to Fort Pierce on a quick little scout a week before that. We waved to him from the car, knowing that we were going to be seeing him in about a week and a half, and he died the Wednesday before we got there, and it's unfortunate because we're really trying to. I've been on this project for 15 years. It's been a passion project of mine. It really boils down to just we didn't have the funding we needed to do it. So, by the graces of God and some people that just really believe in the story, we were able to get some initial seed money to get this thing started. And it's important because, we need to capture these people and film them and get their stories and preserve them, not just from a historical perspective, but just, for future generations and the inspiration that they, whether they know it or not. I mean, it's truly an inspirational. Each one of them is an inspirational story. And that was another thing we discovered when we did our initial research on the script years back. It's so hard to craft a story that fit into like a 2-hour feature film. So we're doing a feature film on them, of course, but it led to the realization that, we also need to do a doc series because it's the only way we can really dive in deep and really explore each artist's personal story and who they are and where they came from and what they're all about. So, the project overall is a 2-parter. It's a 6-part doc series, which we've already started filming for, and then the feature film, of course, which we're ready to roll on. We just on delays right now due to COVID and whatnot. So,
What would be your timeline for it once you get going? When do you expect that these might be launched?
It's a good question. The film itself is, a good 20-25 day shoot if we were to do it consecutively back to back. We're breaking it up into different phases for financing reasons and also just for scheduling reasons due to COVID. But originally both projects were on the same timeline, start timeline, and eventually they veer off and take their own path. But for the doc series, since we've already started that, it's probably a good year for both projects to get done if everything goes, according to plan. But these things take on a life of their own, and you just kind of organically have to, go with the flow with how they unravel. But schedule wise, we're aiming for about a year and whatnot. But there's there's going to be 5 to 6 hours of content in the doc series alone, and then another 2 hours for the feature film. So there's a lot of content we're capturing and piecing together and whatnot. And there's a lot that goes into that to produce it and release it the right way. So we're excited. I mean, it's a great journey. And listen, I mean, like I said, I've been on it for like 15 years, so I'm not going anywhere. And it's a passion project for me. It's been one since day one, and we're just excited.
Thank you for your diligence on it. It's
it's like, I mean, what else am I going to do? I'm really devoted to telling stories that make the world a better place, and that's what these guys did. Again, I know they were painting to make a living, and I know they were doing what they needed to do to survive, so to speak. But in the meantime, whether they realized it or not, they were really clearing a path, paving a way that others could follow. And whether you're an artist or get into mathematics or engineering or whatever it is, I mean, you just need to follow your dreams and not let anyone stop you.
Hey, Café on Tampa style, if anybody has any questions, you can post them underneath or to the right of the message here. And please be sure to hit the share button so that we can share this as broadly as possible. We do this as a free service for the community. Can you tell us for a minute about film production? So and looking at your site, you've got some really cool shows that you've been working on, and you do it from Orlando. Maybe you could tell us some of the shows that you have done recently, what you're about to launch, and also what it's like to be based in Orlando.
Yeah, I mean, I love Orlando. I'm originally from Cleveland. I got down here about 25 years ago with Disney, and I produced and directed just a ton of fun stuff with Disney, working with Disney Channel and all the different subsidiaries with Disney, Lucasfilm, and Pixar and whatnot. So there's a long history there of stuff, and I've got a website called Todd Thompson Online where I have some of my favorite stuff up there, for people to check out. But on the film side, I've been in God. I always tell people, ever since my dad took me to see Star Wars, which was 77. I know it was a Saturday matinee on a cold February gray Ohio day that we went to go see Star Wars. And like, I was cinched after that. I mean, it was just my path was laid out for me, and it was been about movies ever since, really.
Hey, I have to stop you because I'm a big Star Wars geek. We don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but you said you worked with Lucasfilm.
All the time you want on Star Wars. We can talk.
What did you do? What did you do for Lucasfilm? Can you say?
Yeah, no, we so when Disney purchased Lucasfilm a few years ago, a lot of the attractions in the park started migrating. They started introducing Skywalker and Lucasfilm into the parks a lot more. So so we did a lot of social media type stuff, a lot of social influencers, if you will. They came in and did a lot of partnering with that. The release of Force Awakens and whatnot. Trying to think what else. They were just in the very early planning stages of the Star Wars Land, which is now obviously open over at the Disney Hollywood Studios. So a lot of like groundwork kind of stuff we did to help pave the way for the opening of those attractions. But ironically, on a film I just finished, another film I worked on for about 5 years, it was a documentary called Woman in Motion. And that's the story of Nichelle Nichols from Star Trek and what she did to pioneer and blaze the trail to bring diversity to the space program. So how she partnered with NASA during the space shuttle program and brought diversity to that astronaut class. And so ironically, that Star Trek project took me to Skywalker Ranch to do all of our mixing. So we did the final mix for that film there. And so that was like, a little dream come true for me, because I had been to Skywalker Ranch a couple times before just as a visitor. But it was like my first official time to like go there and work, and get to actually mix a movie, and it's just a fascinating place, and it's where all the magic happens, and it's a beautiful. I always call it like rehab for filmmakers, because go through the blood, sweat, and tears of making a film for 5 years, and you finally get to go to this beautiful retreat, and you're working hard to get the mix done, but it's just such a tranquil setting. And
did you get to see George Lucas's collection? He has like one of the original Yodas and some other.
Oh, I mean, there's just little Easter eggs all over the place. I mean, first of all, George is a huge art collector. And so the artwork around the property is just phenomenal. And because, when you're there, you stay at the Skywalker Inn, which is it's almost like a little bed and breakfast that he set up specifically for his friends and, people that come in to work on projects specifically. So it's very private. And it's like you're entering this code. You agree to this secret code of like, you might be having breakfast or lunch next to Robert Redford, for example, but you don't do anything beyond just pass the salt, you just enjoy their time together. So it's a neat little facility, a lot of cool creative collaboration. I mean, J.J. Abrams was there cutting the trailer for a new movie, and John Favreau was there, I think, working on Lion King at the time. I was there. I was there in 2019, last year, a total of like 4 or 5 times working on Woman in Motion. So we had to go back and forth for a few reasons. But
is that out yet? Can we watch that?
You know what? It's a good question. We just sold the movie. I mean, I'm really happy to tell you that, it just got picked up for North American distribution. A company called Shout Factory purchased it. The actual release is going to be early 2021. I don't have all the details to share with you yet, but there is, theatrical and streaming, of course, involved. So it should, I mean, I'm a little biased, I guess, but it's a fascinating movie. It was an extremely humbling experience to make the movie, to get to know Nichelle over the years, and she's just a beautiful human being, and certainly deserving of a story like this. And she's another example of just somebody who, knowing it or not, just made the world a better place, and just through what she did and what she believed in. And so,
can you tell that it's probably been overtold, but for people who haven't heard it, could you tell the Martin Luther King story, or maybe better stories than that?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a great story. Nichelle's a singer and a Broadway actress. Her first love is singing and performing on the stage, and so she had a gig in Hawaii, which got her to LA. I'm going to kind of tell you the long version of this, but she was on her way to Hawaii for a gig, and she had a pit stop in LA. She fell in love with LA. So after the gig wrapped up in Hawaii, she decided to make LA her home, and she naturally got into TV and whatnot. Well, so one of her first gigs as an actress on television was The Lieutenant, which was a Gene Roddenberry show. So that's how she met Gene. And Gene was a pretty forward-thinking guy and had promised her that he was working on something that would definitely involve her if it got released and got approved, which led to Star Trek, basically. Long story short, so she was all excited and she did her first year on Star Trek. But this character that she really kind of helped create with Gene, as the scripts came in, it was a great role, but then as it got to be shooting time, the role just got diminished more and more and more. So, and she'll tell you, like, her lines, which were, these monologues, ended up becoming yes, Captain, no, Captain, just basic things. But so, as an actress, as an artist, she, got bored very quickly, I think. And she wanted to return to the stage and return to her love of singing and whatnot. So after the first season, she had turned in her resignation, and she was attending, I think it was the first NAACP event out there. And there was a fan that wanted to meet her, and she told the organizers, no, not today. I'm here for other reasons. And this guy was really persistent. And so finally, when she turned around and she saw who it was Dr. King. And he took her aside, and he already knew that she had resigned and was ready to leave her role. And he basically said, listen, you need to go in on Monday, get your job back. And here's why. And he just had the forward thought of, the fact that she's on television every week with a national audience, and she's African-American, and she's in a leadership role on the bridge, even though she says, yes, sir, no, sir, just her presence alone was enough it was like that next step that he knew the world needed to see. And ironically, there were similar things going on with Kennedy and the first Black astronaut, the first Black test pilot, rather, that was qualified to become an astronaut. And it's amazing when you find out, how the system kept that man down and prevented him from becoming the first astronaut, which then eventually led to Nichelle's campaign. But, that could have happened in the 60s during the Apollo program, but there was reasons, forces beyond our control, I guess, that kept that from happening, even though both John F. Kennedy and his brother Robert, made a point to make sure this guy was going to become the first astronaut. And he unfortunately passed away, but there were pieces and parts that were being put in place at the time to let the world see African Americans, more integrated in our society and in different roles. And she just was she was part of that whole mix. And so Dr. King really insisted that she, not quit, and she go beyond. She sacrificed, I guess, her growth as an artist for the good of mankind. And so sure enough, look what it led to. I mean, she's iconic. And
so that tell us the name of that one again, and when do you think it might come out?
So the name of the film is Woman in Motion, and you can go on our website, starsnorth.com, and check out the trailer. It's up there. You can check out the trailer for that. But it's going to come out in 2021. And
what other ones have you recently posted, or will be coming out soon?
I'm working on. I got quite a few projects going on right now. We're putting the finishing touches to a Beatles film called Prefab, which is a really fascinating story about John Lennon's very first band, the Quarrymen, and in particular this guy Colin Hanson, who was John Lennon's first drummer, and probably the only guy on earth that was there the day John met Paul, and Paul introduced everyone to George, and it ended up being John, Paul, George, and Colin for a couple years as a skiffle group called the Quarrymen. When they migrated to rock and roll and whatnot. But it wasn't in the cards for Colin, and John and Paul and George obviously went on to become the Beatles, and Colin became an upholsterer. So, but it's a really cool story, and it's a humbling story, and it's sweet, and I've been working on that for a couple of years now, and it looks great. We're putting the finishing touches on that, and then we're starting production on another musical documentary called Del Shannon Runaway, and Del's infamous rock and roll legend, as you know, lots of hits, Run Around Sue and The Runaway, and all that. So it's great. It's a great experience there working on that project. And then of course the Highwaymen, we've got the doc series in production and the feature film in pre-production right now. So it's exciting times.
Yeah, please be sure to let us know when the Highwaymen launch. Del, we've already run out of time. I'm sorry we talked about Star Trek and Star Wars. Do you have any other questions, Del? Any final questions?
Yeah, well, I have a question. Behind you, Todd, is the painting. I assume it's the Highwayman. Can you give us the artist name and identify it as being a Highwayman painting and a little bit more about it?
Yeah, that's actually I can't tell you too much about it, but it is a Highwayman painting. It's going to be featured in the film. It's actually our main prop from the film, and I can't tell you much more about that because that's how the story unravels. So the story kind of revolves around that painting back there, and you'll understand why when you see the movie.
Do you know what year it was painted?
I do.
Hey, we would love to have a launch in Tampa. I don't know where you'll do the big premiere, but we would love to, Café con Tampa co-host a launch in Tampa when you get ready to do it.
It'll be fun. Yeah, definitely. We'll definitely stay in touch. And, it is a Florida project, and I've been committed for 15 years to make sure we keep it a Florida project. And we're finally here. We're finally, rolling cameras, and I'm really excited about it. And I just can't thank, my immediate team enough, everyone that's been dedicated with me along the years to see this thing to fruition. Our investors, our collectors that have come on board to really, see this through. And it's just a great, friends and family group of people that are really devoted to telling the story and making sure that it gets preserved the right way. So we're really honored to be telling it.
We have viewers throughout the state. Are there any public museums that are featuring the Highwaymen paintings in their exhibits?
Yeah, there's an exhibit that's wrapping up relatively soon at the Orlando Museum of Art. So you definitely, if you're in Central Florida, I would strongly suggest getting over there to see that. It's a beautiful collection of 5 or 6 different collectors, but there's 3 or 4 rooms devoted to the Highwaymen in that exhibit. It wraps up on the 16th though, so definitely want to get over there to see that. And I think there's other permanent exhibits around town. I know the History Museum has a small collection. I'm sure that I know the Backus Museum down in Fort Pierce. They have a room that features Highwaymen art. And there's a show. We're actually going to be filming in Mount Dora this weekend, August 8th and 9th. There's an art show in Mount Dora. It's the 25th anniversary, I believe, of the legendary Highwaymen. And there are going to be some first generation original artists there, some second gen, which is family, and then some legacy painters, which are people that have trained under the Highwaymen at that show. So if you're a fan or enthusiast of the art, you should definitely come check that out.
Any other final thoughts? We could talk to you forever, but we don't want to take up any more of your time right now. Thank you so much for what you're doing on the art front, and that you're doing it from Florida, and that you're supporting Florida stories. Can you tell us your websites again and anything else you'd like to say?
Yeah, you can reach us and check out our stuff at starsnorth.com. It's starsnorth.com. And then my personal website is Todd Thompson Online, but everything's on Stars North regarding the films.
Great. Well, as they launch, please let us know. We'd love to help promote them, let our audience know. I'm sure people will be very interested, and look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks so much.
Yeah, Bill, thanks for the opportunity. It was a lot of fun. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks. Bye.